Medical Monday. Sorry I'm not outside today. It's probably bad enough that if I held the camera up in order to videotape this, that you probably wouldn't even see me. There's a lot of snow and wind outside. So I wanted to do this inside as well because I'm going to show you guys a diagram that I use in order to cover the subject today, shock. Shock is one of those life-threatening situations or added onto life-threatening injuries. And I have a nice little diagram that keeps it as simple as possible so that everyone from a professional responder all the way down to someone that does a survival course or a standard first aid course can look at it and understand the severity of what is happening. So what is shock? Shock at its simplest is loss of blood or loss of oxygen in the body. And your body is now doing self-preservation or survival in order to compensate for the loss of blood or loss of oxygen by a bunch of different ways. It can be accelerating your heart rate, increasing or decreasing your blood pressure, increasing or decreasing your respirations in order to deal with the situation at hand. There's 4 different phases that kind of end up happening within shock itself. First step that we're looking at, and the one, as you can tell by the green color, is the one that we are easiest to deal with. So mechanism of injury, so MOI, something bad has happened. Some sort of injury has happened, and that's where we're marking that initial line. This here, the green line, represents compensating shock. Compensating shock is your body is able to deal with the loss of oxygen or loss of blood at this time. After compensating shock, what we have is decompensating shock. So we're no longer following that nice straight line of the body being able to deal with the loss. Now the loss is becoming more and more apparent. And you'll generally see that in the person's vitals. Their body is making those physiological changes in order to deal with that loss of oxygen or loss of blood at this time. Third step after decompensating is irreversible. Irreversible is to the point where if they're not at advanced medical, then the chances of them recovering from this point on without the aid of the nurses and doctors and a hospital type setting, there's only one real outcome. And lastly, if not enough treatment or the proper treatment is not given by this point in time, there's only one unfortunate outcome. The main idea of all pre-hospital care is keeping them at compensating shock. Now, with that being said, this is not always a state that they are in because of the severity of the injury. So they might go to decompensating shock. The main goal on decompensating shock is to slow it down. How do we slow it down? We treat the injury. If they are in cardiac arrest and you need to perform CPR, every cycle of CPR slows this down. If they're bleeding profusely from a limb or extremity, then we stop the blood flow, we slow this down. The treatment treats shock as well. Now, there's other types of signs and symptoms that get added to shock treatment. Maintain core body temperature, treat for the main thing that caused them to go into shock. That's your main goals. I hope this helps. If you have any more comments or questions about this topic or have suggestions for any others, I'd be glad to help.